Hello everyone, and welcome to the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. And today I want to talk about a really fundamental component of life, our relationships, specifically our romantic relationships. And I want to share with you 10 tips to protect your romantic relationships from disasters. That's what we'll be focusing on. Why am I talking about this? Well, because most people need romantic relationships to have a good and healthy life, to feel fulfilled, to feel connected, to feel like their life is meaningful. And it's not everyone, but the large majority of us do feel that need, do have that need. So let's talk about that. How can we have happy and fulfilling relationships? Well, to do so, you really need to understand the science of these romantic relationships. And these 10 tips that I'll be talking about are all coming from the scientific literature on the psychology of effective relationships. How can we have truly effective romantic relationships? Now, the first tip, you might not be surprised about this. You really need to be intentional, not just emotional, not just spontaneous, but really be intentional about your relationship. As you're starting your relationship, figure out the truth, the facts, the reality, not simply your hopes, wishes, and dreams. Because if you don't start your relationship on a solid foundation, it will not last. If you notice yourself really trying to ignore a topic, flinching away from something that's causing you negative emotions, it's time to notice that flinching and address that flinching. Get at the truth, get at the facts. Because if you don't start your relationship on a sound footing, those unresolved issues, they'll come back to you. They'll come back and they will cause a lot of problems when the relationship is more serious and when there's more at stake. So don't let that happen to you. All right. Number 2, don't assume that they're the same person that you are. Avoid failing at their mind. It's very easy for us to assume that those people with whom we are in a relationship are very similar to us. But they're much less like us than it seems to you. It's hard to accept it. It certainly was hard for me to accept when I was getting into a relationship with my wife, and we've been together already for 2 decades. And I still find out things about her that are different from me, and it's a hard thing to realize and accept and acknowledge. But it's really important. It doesn't feel intuitive and comfortable. So you need to understand that even people who are super close disagree on some things, and that's okay. You want to focus on things that you appreciate about your partner. They might be things that are similar to you, to what you are. They might be things that are different than what you are. And you can disagree on some things, and that's okay. So keep that big picture in mind and be okay with those disagreements, and be okay with realizing and recognizing and getting at the truth of those disagreements, like tip 1 said. Tip 3. Here's a really useful technique that research shows is very helpful, using tell culture. So it's a communication strategy that involves being open, being honest, and sharing your vulnerabilities, lowering barriers, being what people call authentic with each other. That creates bonds of trust. So you tell the other person what you think they would benefit from knowing about. Even if those things are unpleasant for you to share, and if they might be unpleasant for that person to hear, they're still very important. They're still going to be vital. Because again, getting at the truth, tell culture, tip 1 is getting at the truth. What is the reality of the relationship? This one is about telling the truth, telling the facts to your relationship partner. Things that you think they would want to know about you, your feelings, what's going on there. Tip 4, it's a lot about communication, and here's another one, removing communication barriers. So anything that prevents you or your relationship partner from being open, so that creates shared expectations if you and your partner are open with each other. If you're not, then the expectations will be maladjusted and you will start feeling at their mind more and more. That will help you gauge whether the relationship that you're entering has long-term viability. Does it really have a future? And so you want to figure out your individual preferences on communications, and that will help you get to compromises. We'll talk about compromises later onward, but here is about lowering removing communication barriers. All right, tip 5, emotional attunement. What does that mean? That means trying to figure out the other person's emotions. Overwhelmingly, our decision making is based on our emotions, not our rational thinking. 90% or so, or more even, of our decisions comes from our emotions. So focus on the other person's emotions when they're talking, when they're expressing something. What are the emotions underlying those words, what they're communicating? So voice, tone, body language, all of those sorts of things convey emotions. Look at the unspoken meanings. What's not being said? What is the context? Now, you won't get that right away. It'll take time to learn that about your partner. But with time, better understanding will come if you try to do so, if you try to emotionally attune yourself to your partner. So that will really help you understand what's going on with your partner. Now, you want to be trusting. So that's tip 6, trust others. Be charitable. So offer trust before trust is extended. And that's how you'll develop relationships. That's how you will create incentives and create inducements for your partner to trust you. So building trust early is what you really want to do in a relationship. And you want to evaluate the trust level in a relationship. Is your partner deserving of trust over time? Is your partner reliable? Are they showing they care about you? So be vulnerable, share secrets, compromise, and see how they do on these same things. And so if they do show the same things, if they show that they're trustworthy and they show trust in you, increase commitment. If they don't, then you might want to question your commitment to this person. Tip 7, respect boundaries and privacy. If you love someone, let them go. You've probably heard that phrase, right? This is vital for trust. So let them go. Don't close them down. Don't try to grip them tight. Because if they feel that they're being bound, there's a natural reactance. It's how we human beings don't like our autonomy bounded, and so we act out against those who try to restrict our autonomy. So you want to respect their boundaries, their privacy. That is critical for building trust and having a good relationship. So give them space. If they want more space, give them more space. Talk to them. Have this be a clear topic of conversation. Share your comfort level and get their comfort level about privacy and boundaries, so you have shared mutual expectations. Tip 8, have healthy conflicts. Many folks don't want to talk about conflicts in a relationship. They think that healthy relationships don't have conflicts. Well, that's BS. Healthy relationships do have conflicts. As I said earlier onward, even the closest people disagree with each other. And if you keep those disagreements bottled up, because you'll inevitably have them, you will run into a lot of serious issues if you don't learn how to have healthy conflicts. So learn those healthy conflict resolution techniques. Be upfront with your partner. Share with them. Remember that tell culture. Share with them facts that you think that they would like to know about yourself, your dynamics, your relationships with your partner, with your dynamics in relationships with others, financial situations, all of these sorts of things, your preferences for the long-term future. Don't make assumptions about your partner. It's too easy, again, when we fail at their minds. That's a bad problem. Don't blame them. Even if it feels like they are the one at fault, don't express blame, because once you start expressing blame and shaming and guilting each other, and especially showing resentment, that is when relationships are really going downhill. Be charitable. Interpret your partner's actions in a charitable fashion. Look at your partner's actions. The actions are always interpretable in an ambiguous fashion. So they're ambiguous, you're not sure what reason they did it for. Assume the best rather than the worst. Assume the best of your partner in why they're doing what they're doing. If you find yourself making a mistake, apologize quickly. Apologize quickly and profusely and honestly about the mistake you make, rather than denying it and flinching away from it. And then, in whatever happened after the conflict, sometimes as the conflict is ongoing, you want to rebuild emotional bonds that are strained, but especially after the conflict, you want to rebuild those emotional bonds that are strained. And sometimes they'll be really helpful to reinforce during the conflict that, honey, I know we're having this tensions, this conflict, but I really love you. And this is just a moment. This is just a problem. We'll get through it. Obviously, our relationship is much stronger and deeper and meaningful, much more meaningful than the single conflict. So that's kind of the idea. If the conflict is prolonged, if it's not brief, you really definitely want to reinforce those emotional bonds during the conflict itself. Now, here are a final pair of tips that might seem contradictory, but they're not at all. So tip 9, meet your own goals. Know what you want in the relationship. What are you trying to get out of it? What are your needs that you're trying to fulfill? Your need for companionship, your need for love, your need for support, whatever it is. Focus on yourself as well as your partner. Remember that your personal beliefs, ideas, preferences, career, goals, all of those are equally important to those of your partner in the context of the relationship. So be honest, be open about your own needs, your own desires. Otherwise, you'll get resentful, you'll be frustrated, you'll build those up. You don't want to be in that situation. It will harm the long-term prospects of your relationship. And finally, like I said, seems contradictory, but compromise. Compromise on your goals and on your partner's goals. And you should compromise reasonably equally your partner, and you should compromise reasonably equally, because you are playing a significant role in that person's life, their future, and they're playing a significant role in your life and future. And you want to have compromises. You want to be clear on what you're compromising on. So balance getting your own needs met and the other person's needs met. You want to really think about the other person and realize that if they're not getting their needs met in the relationship, well, that will not be a healthy relationship. It will not be sustained in the long term. So figure out mutually beneficial compromises. Don't go too often to the, well, let's agree to disagree and do your own thing. That's a problem. You want to have a compromise that's acceptable to both parties. Agreeing to disagree is usually something that keeps a conflict going. That's not a thing you want to do. Choose your battles, choose the hill on which you want to die, right? Some things are going to be perhaps non-negotiable for you, but keep those to super, super limited things. And if you early onward voice those things, and if you find out that your partner has something that contradicts those non-negotiable things, perhaps they're not a good partner for you. And in general, pick your battles. Don't fight too hard over things that matter little. And express to your partner, how much does actually something matter to you? If your partner has a preference for something and you have a preference for the opposite thing, ask, how strong is your preference? Is it a slight preference? Is it a moderate preference? Is it a strong preference? Those 3 levels can be a relatively easy way of measuring. And then if you have a slight preference and they have a moderate preference, it's better to go with their moderate preference. Or if they have a moderate preference and you have a strong preference, it's better to go with your strong preference. So understand the other person, respect the other person, and make sure that the other person understands and respects you. That's going to be the key to having effective compromises. All right. And these are the 10 tips to protect your romantic relationships from disaster. I hope this episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show has been helpful for you. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, which sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. Please check out the notes on this show in the podcast notes. There's going to be much more information with a blog and books about this topic, so check that out. And email me about anything you heard in this show. I'd love to learn about your thoughts on it. Gleb, Gleb, at disasteravoidanceexperts.com. And of course, please like this show and subscribe to it wherever you checked it out. We have a video cast, we have a podcast version, so whether it's YouTube or whether you got it on iTunes or Amazon Music or whatever, Google Play, wherever you got it, please subscribe. And please leave a review. We love to hear your thoughts in the review as well, and that helps other folks discover this show and get the same benefit that you're getting right now. All right, everyone. I look forward to seeing you next time on the Wise Decision Maker Show. And in the meantime, the wisest and most profitable decisions to you, my friends.